Hello and welcome to episode 189 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host, Devin Dundee. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Sigmund Judge. Sigmund, this week was sort of a week of anniversaries. We saw the 5-year anniversary of Apple Silicon making its world debut with the M1. The iPod also saw its 24th anniversary, and Apple gave us something of a blast from the past, not the return of the iPod Sock, but the introduction of iPhone Pocket. This is the new iPhone accessory that people can't help but talk about. It's really interesting. It's not quite a handbag. I think Apple's kind of positioning it as an external pocket for those who maybe don't have one or want a different way to carry their iPhones. It's created in collaboration with Issey Miyake, who famously created Steve Jobs' black turtleneck that we all know him for. And now they've got this interesting collaboration that's going to be available online through the Apple Store this Friday and in select stores worldwide. So if you want to see it in person, you're going to have to make sure you're in one of these handful of stores that are listed, and we'll leave a link to that in the show notes. But it's interesting. It's a way to carry your iPhone and I guess some other objects in the bottom. There's like some extra space underneath the iPhone. Apple didn't show that in any pictures. But it's a stylish new way to carry your phone, either in like a handbag style or a cross-body style. People have really been talking about this. Do you have any thoughts on the iPhone Pocket?
Yes. My thoughts are, with all due respect to everyone involved in the project, I think this is ridiculous. I understood the kind of camera strap that came with the iPhone this time round, and I thought that was very, very cool. People have been making the comparison with the iPod Sock. Now, let's keep in mind the iPod Sock came in a 6-pack, right? And in fact, it was available in 7 colours. There was the long-forgotten red colourway, which Stephen Hackett at 512 Pixels wrote a cool little post about. I'd totally forgot there was a red one. So it was cool in that sense. As soon as I saw the price, though, personally for me, I just felt this wasn't a product that was made specifically for me and grabbed my interest. There will be diehards that love this and go for it. What I would say with regard to this, though, is it probably suits better the Apple Vision Pro battery. What do you think? And I mean, that's coming from someone who bought the Belkin strap and then never used it and quickly flipped it on eBay.
I need a solution for my Vision Pro battery because I tend to just put it in my pocket when I'm walking around with it. But then when I sit down, I have to switch it from my back pocket to my front pocket. Sometimes I get mixed up on where it is and I end up getting tangled. And this would definitely solve something like that. So I hadn't thought of that as a use case. That's a really cool idea. This might be a little pricey for that use case. I mean, some people would say it's pricey for carrying around your iPhone as well. The short one costs $149.95, and the long crossbody one costs $229.95. But if you want a really fancy way to carry around your Vision Pro battery or your iPhone, that would definitely do it.
I saw the models in the press release photos, and I got to say, one of them looked very similar to yourself. And so I did look at the promo photo and think, yeah, I think Devin could carry this. But me, I don't think I've got the physique for something like this to wrap around my body.
I do love a crossbody bag. My problem is I already carry 2 day to day. I carry one for my iPad and one for my Vision Pro. So I'm already walking around with 2 crossbody straps. So I kind of run out of shoulders here. And I tend to wear jeans and pants that have pockets in them. So carrying my phone isn't usually an issue. But for those who maybe wear things that don't have pockets or just are looking for a different way, it definitely is a look. And I think for someone with the right style, this could be a really fun way to carry around your iPhone. And it gets to pop out a little bit out of the top if you want it to, kind of show off a little bit of the personality, especially if you got the iPhone Air. I think it looks good with the iPhone Air popping out of there, and you got some room on the bottom. Apple mentions that if you fill the bottom, The fabric stretches to the point you can actually like check your iPhone screen through the bag, which is interesting. Again, I want to see some hands-on with this and see exactly how it works. Until then, if you're interested in the iPhone Pocket, it is going to go on sale this Friday. And if you're in one of the handful of cities that are going to have it in store, definitely check it out and let us know what you think of it with hands-on.
It did come in the week where I feel like you and I are constantly looking over our shoulder due to many rumours that we've touched upon time and time again. But I think this week's Apple TV news is going to be dominated once again by originals. A really, really special week for Apple originals this week. So special, in fact, that we don't have just one highlight, but we have two for you. Starting with Come See Me in the Good Light.
In an intimate and joyful story of love in the face of loss, celebrated poets Andrea Gibson and Megan Foley find strength and unexpected hilarity in what might be their final year together.
I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer.
This is the beginning of a nightmare, I thought. But stay with me, because my story is one about happiness being easier to find once we realize we do not have forever to find it.
I was made for you.
This one comes to us from director Ryan White. It features an original song performed by Sarah Bareilles and Brandi Carlile, written by Andrea Gibson, Sarah Bareilles, and Brandi Carlile. Sigmund, you got to see the documentary earlier in the year at Sheffield Documentary Festival before the late poet's passing in July. Did you know much about Andrea's work going in, and is it something that you need to know about before watching the documentary?
Yeah, I didn't, and I don't think you need to either. In fact, Ryan White, the director, knew next to nothing about Andrea or Megan ahead of meeting. In fact, Andrea was a longtime friend of one of his longtime collaborators, Tig Notaro, whom also stars as well as produces in this documentary. All he had to go off on was a little understanding on Andrea as a poet, their humour, and that they were battling a terminal cancer diagnosis. Ryan White and Jessica Hargrave were invited to bring their cameras into Andrea Gibson and Megan Foley's home during both the good times and the bad, and I really didn't know what to expect going into this the first time I watched it. But what they captured is a real thing of beauty. It's a beautifully honest portrait of two generational wordsmiths that encapsulates, I think, the creative spirit and the importance of relationship, as well as the importance of identity, to a point faith, and not necessarily faith in a higher being, but faith in one another, and mortality, which is a really difficult subject, I think, for the director, or even for viewers to go in knowing that, you know, we're going to be talking about death in the time that we have on Earth. You know, strangely, even though all of these things are so hard-hitting, there are times in this documentary that are going to make you laugh out loud, right? They're that funny. It's natural and it's real and honest, and that's where true humour comes from. It comes from this part of honesty that we sometimes dare to unlock. And yeah, you know, you have these funny moments, and then the next moment you want to wrap your arms around everyone in frame in an embrace and tell them that it's going to be okay. In fact, I think the original intention for the documentary was for the crew to ultimately document Andrea's death, but the director soon let his subject know that after spending just a few days in their presence, he realised it would not be a film about dying, but would be one about living. And again, having seen it, I couldn't agree more that that intention really comes through on this finished documentary. In fact, you know, it was crafted with such speed and love that the film made its debut before Andrea's passing. And there's a great Q&A from earlier this year, which we'll link to in the show notes, that I think truly celebrates that. The documentary is beautiful. I know you haven't had a chance of seeing it just yet, Devon.
No, not yet, but hearing you describe it, it certainly sounds powerful and impactful. Of course, it's tackling such a difficult subject, but It's doing it in a way that it sounds like it's going to be something that viewers can walk away feeling hopeful or at least inspired in some way. So what will viewers take away from the documentary?
I mean, I can't speak for others, but I can tell you what I took from this documentary, and that I think includes, firstly, a stunning collection of thoughts committed to print that now reside on my bookshelf. Knowing nothing about Andrea or Megan going in, their writing is just so beautiful and so timeless. But more than anything, I think what I got from this was how precious this life is and how fearless and, I'd say, kind you must be to truly leave your mark on this world. And I don't think either, fearlessness or kindness can lead the other. They have to be in equal amounts. I also feel like if I say much more, I may give listeners the opportunity to put off watching because it's not an easy subject to tackle, but it's such a worthwhile story. But to end this, Devon, I wanted to read what Megan Foley had posted after watching the film for the first time without their muse, Andrea Gibson. That the film was completed so quickly was itself a tremendous act of love. After only one magnificent year of shooting, Andrea and I were given the rarest gift, to sit beside each other, hands threaded for 90 minutes, watching the surprisingly joyous life we tried, and failed, to capture in words articulated so precisely on screen. As the credits rolled at Sundance, Andrea kissed my wet cheeks and whispered, "This is going to help so many people." To them, that was the highest praise art could achieve. Andrea was never concerned with what they could get from their work, but what they could give, like a widow who tries to dive into a lover's casket. I wanted to plunge myself into the screen, into the past, into a version of our home where Andrea still wondered, still sat at our desk to type out some casual brilliance. The screening in New York City was the first time I saw the film without Andrea in the world. In the first few minutes, I could hardly pick my head up. The scenes hadn't changed, but I had, every moment refracted through the jagged lens of grief. My heart broke like a bowl thrown at a wall, and I cried the whole way through. My hand felt operated by a delusional marionette. For an hour and a half, I suppressed what felt like the most natural urge to reach toward the film and pluck Andrea out of it, back into this tangible reality, into the red velvet seat beside me. Come See Me in the Good Light premieres this Friday on Apple TV and comes with the highest of personal recommendations. So, that's what's coming Friday. But yesterday we saw a return to Apple TV screens. I think it's going to make us laugh a lot in a different way, and that is the brilliant Palm Royale. Maxine is left a social pariah after a scandalous public breakdown. She'll have to draw on her deep well of cleverness and cunning to prove once and for all that not only does she belong, but she just might have what it takes to rule this town. Along the way, she will uncover untold truths and finally understand what this town is truly built on: secrets, lies, and the occasional felony.
In Palm Beach, we swallow our rage.
I can't, Evelyn, it's too big. I'll choke on it.
Darling, that's what Quaaludes and vodka are for.
It was the beginning of a new season.
Amen to that.
Alliances are forged.
We can buy the Palm Royale.
And rule Palm Beach.
What a completely wonderful and absolutely organic plan.
Battle plans are hatched.
A new chapter. Let's go take Palm Beach.
Palm Royale is created by Abe Sylvia and stars and is executive produced by Kristen Wiig and Laura Dern, with an incredible ensemble, including Alison Janney, Ricky Martin, Carol Burnett, Josh Lucas, Leslie Bibb, Amber Sade Robinson, Mindy Cohen, Julia Duffy, and Kaya Gerber, with new guest stars including the great John Stamos, Patti LuPone, Vicki Lawrence, and Matt Rogers. Devon, first off, how does it feel to revisit this town, and how does it feel to be returning to the infamous club Palm Royale for another season.
It feels absolutely fantastic. Jumping into season 2, it feels like I never left. There's just like a special brain space that I go into when I turn the show on, and I just slipped right back into it, and I loved it so much. Just watching the recap, which I held off on watching the recap on YouTube until right before watching season 2, and I was reminded just how absolutely chaotic and hilarious this show is. The last little couplet in the recap is Ricky Martin and Kristen Wiig on screen together. Kristen Wiig is digging through her purse, and she goes, "Oh, that's where I left my keys." And Ricky Martin says, "Why do you have a gun?" And I think that just tells you pretty much everything you need to know about Palm Royale and what you're getting yourself into. It's really hilarious. I was instantly just back in that mindset, ready to soak up the lavish views, enjoy some delicious backstabbing and one-liners, which Palm Royale is so great at delivering for us.
Well, you've kind of led with that last bit there from the recap as to, where we pick up with Maxine at the beginning of season 2. But where do we actually pick up with Maxine at the beginning of season 2?
Well, we actually start off not at the real Palm Royale, but within Maxine's mind, getting a glimpse in one of her magnificent fantasies that we love to see as she imagines her triumphant return to the club the following season. It features a full-on musical sequence highlight with Ricky Martin himself and Kristen Wiig dancing on a table. It's an incredible opening number there and a great showcase of their talent, as well as, of course, Maxine's mindset as we're going in and her recovery from this really public breakdown that she's faced. In actuality, we're just moments after the calamitous end to her beach ball, where her husband's infidelity was publicly unveiled, a radical group attempted to take the president's life, and Maxine's only true confidant, Robert, took the bullet instead. And so things have really gone downhill for Maxine leading into season 2, which we saw at the end of season 1. She's being quote-unquote treated at an asylum where husbands put their wives when they're acting out, which just so happens to be where her friend Linda is being held for trying to shoot the president, a crime she did not commit, but it creates for some really nice interactions there. She's in jeopardy of being stuck there forever as Norma, who we learned last season is actually a murderous imposter named Agnes, hatches a plot to convince Maxine's husband Douglas to leave her and marry Mitzi, who is carrying his child, who could be the key to a huge family fortune. That's where we pick up with season 2. That's kind of the premise going into this first episode and what we're going to be seeing throughout the season. And as you can imagine, Sigmund, based on that recap, there is a lot going on.
There is, and there's a lot to tie up, right? I would say, just in this first episode, it almost sounds like too much from an outside perspective. Do you think viewers jumping in will find it overwhelming? And also, maybe this is a question to answer for later, but is this the second and final season? What do you think?
Okay. That's an interesting question. Well, let me answer the first about it being overwhelming first. Yes, it is overwhelming, and that's a part of the fun, because I think what it's doing is it's showing you just how in over her head Maxine has become. In season 1, we see her coming to Palm Beach. She's so confident. She knows that she can take her place. She's positioned well to take over the town and get in with these ladies, and she thinks everything's just going to be all hunky-dory. And what she realizes is there's a lot more going on underneath the surface of Palm Beach than she ever realized. And she's really just gotten in with some people who you really don't want to mess with, but she just doesn't realize it in that moment. In terms of, is this the second and final season? I hope not. I mean, I think this kind of chaos has the potential to go on for a long time. And it's messy enough that these twists and turns, and even at the end of season 1 with this big reveal of a secret identity for one of the characters, it was completely out of the blue, but it was also earned in a way. And I feel like they have the potential to keep doing stuff like that. There's actually a little bit of that even in the season 2 premiere as well. And so, we don't know exactly what the future holds for Palm Royale. It could be planned that the second season is the final. I hope not, because I just love what they're doing with it. In the midst of all the chaos, it does have some emotional moments, and those are really touching. I think we talked about that in the season 1 recap. There's some things between Maxine and Douglas especially that I do find touching, but mostly it's just about watching rich people be terrible to each other and suffer the consequences of it, and there's something just so satisfying about that. I would say if you didn't watch the first season, you could probably even jump into season 2 with just the recap. You might miss a couple of the finer details, but I think you could certainly enjoy the twists and turns along the way. And again, just that wild nature of it, you're kind of just along for the ride. I think that it's a lot of fun, and you don't necessarily have to know all the details of the characters' backstories to get into that. I can't decide, Sigmund, if this is a soap opera with a fantastical flair or if it's a soapy fantasy, but it's one of those two, and I can't wait to see more from the second season of Palm Royale.
All right, so what are you looking forward to, or what are you hoping for in this season? Because I know how kind of attached you have become to, I'd say, the majority of the characters for different reasons. They're all stabbing one another in the back. For the most part, they're all stabbing one another in the back.
Yeah, no one comes out innocent in Palm Beach is what I've learned, but they're all just, it's so great to see and try to predict what they're going to do to each other. So I'm looking forward to, of course, more Southern insults from Maxine, who's played magnificently by Kristen Wiig. The writers are constantly coming up with new ways for her to respond to surprising situations in just the most Southern way, and I love that. I'm very interested in what's going to happen with Mitzi, played by Kaya Gerber. She was a really interesting character last season. She was kind of an outsider. She was doing people's nails, and she slowly worked her way in through a series of circumstances, and now she's in a really powerful position this season, which I think is interesting. I'd love to see some sign of morality from Douglas, played by Josh Lucas, but I'm not holding my breath based on what we saw during the first season and what we've seen at the beginning of season 2. He's a really interesting character because I do think he's probably the one character who has the most potential to do the right thing, but so far we haven't seen him doing that, so we'll have to hold our breath to wait and see. And then really the thing I'm most excited for, because I don't know any details, but I'm just ready to see whatever John Stamos is doing in Palm Beach. I'm really excited he's involved this season, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do with him.
Very, very cool. Well, Palm Royale saw its Season 2 return earlier this week on Apple TV, with new episodes premiering each Wednesday through January 14th. So lots and lots of intrigue and backstabbing to come, no doubt, and from Ricky Martin, and I'm hoping plenty of musical interludes. But it's time for us to talk about something that is coming hopefully soon, hopefully before the end of the year. We got a bit of a preview this week of a new change to profiles in tvOS 26.2, which is currently available to both beta testers in the developer beta program and also public beta testers. Some really, really big changes here to profiles and a little bit of wish fulfillment here, Devon.
Yeah, I'm really excited about these changes to profiles in 26.2. There are some things here that I've long wanted, but didn't really know how Apple would be able to pull off. But now we're getting a glimpse of what that could look like, and we'll continue to monitor it throughout, of course, this beta process before it comes out publicly. But what we've seen so far is that in profiles in tvOS 26.2, they no longer default to requiring an Apple account. All you have to do is give the name of the profile, a content rating allowance of what restrictions you want to put on it, and an indication of whether or not the person you're creating a profile for is a child, which we'll talk about more in a moment. But you can still upgrade the profile with an Apple account, but you don't have to sign in with their credentials or a separate device just to create the profile. So it's a really interesting change to the setup of profiles in tvOS from what we've seen so far, where every profile was connected one-to-one to an Apple account, and you had to sign in order to set that up. Now, at least with this process, you can create like a guest profile. You can create a profile for a child who doesn't have an Apple account, and I think that's really interesting. So I've been reading up as much on this as I possibly can. I know you've had some hands-on with it and actually tried it out. Mm-hmm. So what is it like to actually use this in practice?
Practically, I think it's good. One question I cannot answer at the moment is whether or not it's per device or if it syncs over, because I only have one Apple TV running the beta at the moment. But it's a really nice addition. The difference here, though, is you have to be quite intentional, right? So you're not going to confuse necessarily creating a new account with creating a guest or a kid account. To add this type of account, you don't add from the profile select screen or control center. Instead, you have to add the new guest or kids profile from profiles and accounts under settings. And then when you click add profile, you'll be prompted to either sign in with an Apple account like normal or create a profile. When you go through the create the profile steps, you choose a name and then one of 66 avatars ranging from film and TV related images to animal emoji and other random emoji. Then in the final screen, you're asked to choose which account should manage the newly created profile, allowing then subscriptions tied to that account to then be shared. There doesn't seem to be any kind of like time scale in terms of if or when a profile that is a guest profile has to be upgraded to an Apple ID. The new guest profiles, by default, they have no restrictions, but when you click on the child option, which is set to no by default, on the finalizing screen, you then get to click the kids option and you can make restriction choices, which actually start with suggested restrictions of TV PG for TV shows and movies rated PG, but users can customize both. And TV show ratings, they can actually be restricted all the way down to TVY or not allow any TV shows at all. And the same goes for movies, with restrictions available all the way down to G. One issue I would say right now that I've noticed is whilst when you're logged into this profile, you go into the TV app and everything is following those parameters that you've set, especially for children. Apple Originals, if you're an Apple TV subscriber, you're only seeing kids Apple Originals and not the adult content, which I know is going to be really important for the likes of yourself, Devon, and for other family out there with younger eyes. But in Beta 1, if the main account has purchased libraries, they actually stay intact without restriction at the moment, which I'm almost sure is a bug. So I just wanted to mention it because if you are a public beta tester and you're already using the feature, it's something to be aware of, because of course Freddy Krueger and the like aren't going to be blocked for those young eyes. So as long as they don't go to library right now, I think you're good. But yeah, kids mode, very, very cool. This is something we've been asking for a long, long time. Obviously, you've been able to set certain restrictions per Apple account on an Apple TV, but I think that's always been a little bit of a complicated process, to be quite honest with you. And whilst that carries over to other devices and whatnot, this is just a simpler way of putting things together and kind of going straight away, right? Especially if you've got a friend coming to visit, maybe, and you just want to set them up with a profile for there and then. It's very cool.
Yeah, the potential for setting up guest profiles is really interesting to me because it'll allow you, when you have visitors over, to not junk up your up next queue, which when I have someone dog sitting or watching Noah and I know they're watching the TV, I can always open my TV app and see what they're watching because it's on my profile on the big TV, and that'll be something that gets eliminated. But what I'm really excited about are the changes for children and the protections here. So the kids mode is going to limit what kids can see in the TV app only to content within their rating allowance, which is not true of profiles, even ones that have parental restrictions right now. And so my son has an account on our Apple TV. He doesn't operate the Apple TV quite yet. He loves the remote. He loves to hold the remote, but he doesn't quite understand, of course, how to navigate everything just yet. But when he goes to watch Not a Box, or I've gotten him into the Snoopy show now, which is awesome, getting to watch Snoopy with him. But when we play those, when we go to the TV app to start one of those shows, everything's there. I mean, you can see, all the things that are happening right now in terms of shows for adults and films for adults. And it's not that those things are bad. I obviously watch a lot of them and cover them here with you, but they're not necessarily things that I want my son to be exposed to. And even though he can't play them, they're still there. And the other thing is, at least up to this point, before these changes were made, trailers for films and TV shows before kids content, even on limited kids profiles, could be for things that are geared for older audiences. And so one thing I ran into was, first of all, Noah just hates the trailers at all because, who wants to, he'll want to watch Not a Box and he sees a trailer for something else and he thinks that it's playing the wrong thing. But we were watching, I believe, the Snoopy show the other day and hit play on it, and immediately the trailer for The Family Plan 2 came up. And, that's a PG-13 film, I believe. It's, it's meant to be approachable for families, but even that trailer, one of the first scenes you see is a dude in a towel coming out of the bathroom, and it's funny. I mean, it's not like completely inappropriate or anything. It's just not something I necessarily want to see when I'm watching TV with my 2-year-old. And so I'm excited that what this is going to do is limit any of that exposure to only what is allowed within his content rating, which of course right now is set as low as it possibly can be. And as he gets older, we'll raise those limits in the screen time settings and let him see more of that. But the TV app is equipped to now grow with him, which is, kind of what we see on Netflix and Disney Plus and other services. And I'm appreciative of having that ability to just, flip that one switch in the profile and instantly the TV app becomes a much safer place, I would say, for young eyes, other than the library tab, which is amazing to me. I'm thinking of someone's kid accidentally stumbling upon like Napoleon in the library tab and watching those battle scenes, things like that. I'm sure they'll work it out, but that is kind of funny for me. The other thing that this is really going to help with is parents having to create Apple accounts for their children who are very young. And Apple has a great system in place for this where, within your family sharing, you can create a child account, get them an iCloud email address, and get them signed in on the Apple TV, which is what we did for Noah when he started having his own, shows that he wanted to watch. But honestly, he's so young now that he doesn't really need an Apple account for anything else. He doesn't have his own devices. There's no devices that are actually signed into his account other than the Apple TV. I think I had to create an account on my Mac with his Apple ID just to accept some terms and conditions and things like that before I could sign in on the Apple TV when I initially set up the account. And so it wasn't a huge hassle, but it just felt like something that was a little early and not necessarily, he just doesn't need a full Apple account with an email address and all those things just yet. And so this will kind of give parents a stopgap in between there where when kids are old enough to want to watch TV and watch their own shows, but they're not quite ready for a full-on account, this is going to give them that stopgap in the middle. And then, of course, when the kids are ready, when they do have a device they need an Apple account for, then you can just add that to the profile, and it'll all sync over. And so I think this is just, it's really well thought out from what I've read in terms of making the experience easier for parents to just keep things as safe as possible on the TV for their kids without necessarily pushing them into the ecosystem before they're really ready for it or need all those features of an Apple account. So I'm really pumped for this. When I first read about it, I immediately texted you and said, can we please talk about this? Because I'm so excited about it. And I think this is going to be really great for my family. And I think this is really cool. I think it's going to be great for parents who own Apple TVs. And I can't wait to dive into this. And, obviously with Noah, we're already to the point where he has one, but any future children or guests in the house, I'm definitely going to be taking advantage of this feature.
I'd just say on the previews side of things before, your feature or your TV show begins playing, I haven't tested to see whether or not they are yet appropriate for the content that you're about to watch. So that'll be interesting to see if that's being looked at, and we'll keep an eye on things there. Also, I think this could be really, really helpful for multiple household families. Each parent could potentially have their own restrictions for their kid in their home, which this would enable. The only issue would probably be keeping everything in sync between the two accounts if they're not the same account. Other use cases, though, I wanted to talk about, because I think beyond kids, and obviously that's the big part of this feature that we're talking about right now. But I'm thinking about older family members who don't necessarily want to be dealing with those accounts and passwords and this kind of thing. Care homes, hotels or guest houses, communal spaces. Do you think this opens Apple TV up in the same ways that I'm predicting or hoping?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about the way that, right now, if you want to share your subscription to Apple TV with other people on the Apple TV box, you've got to use family sharing. They have to have their own Apple account. And to separate things out, it's just, I'm not going to say it's complicated, but it does require everyone to go through this process, including having an email address, which for some people, they may not have access to email all the time or want to use things that way. And so what this would allow you to do is, in a case where you have someone who you want to have access to things, but don't necessarily need to go all the way into the Apple account world, you can just create them a profile that piggybacks off your account. And it's all within the realm of what's allowed because it's your device and, it's within your home or whatever shared space you're in. If you're in a communal area where you're logged into the account, you can still give people access and divvy out their up next queues and that sort of thing, and without having all that complication. So yeah, it's almost a little bit of an accessibility feature in that sense, in that it just makes Apple TV profiles available to people without requiring them to jump through some of the hoops that they may not be willing to. And again, it leads to cleaner up next queues for those people who are organizing things, which I'm always going to appreciate.
Over the last week, with my practical experience, I've been doing a little bit of testing. And so I thought I'd kind of test the limits of family sharing and see what this enables and what it doesn't, and maybe some things that people need to be aware of, at least at this early stage of this feature being introduced. Firstly, it should be noted that the guest and kids profiles do have an account number limit. That limit is set to 5 per account. So for those managing family sharing accounts, be aware that each of your family members actually have 5 slots as well available to them for creating up to 5 guest or kids profiles under their account with which you manage. So make sure strict rules are in place, otherwise you could potentially have a situation where, unbeknown to you, you have 30 accounts billed to your Apple ID. I think that's something that we have to take into consideration, is that whatever settings that you have on your account, if you are managing the account, those settings pay forward, right? So I don't like to put in my password every time I want to make a purchase on my account. If I'm setting up kids accounts or guest accounts, that is going to carry over. So they can just press buy on everything and suddenly you're looking at your bank account and wondering what on earth is going on. So something I think that's worthy of noting. However, this is, again, it's a big step, and I'm really, really excited for this. I'm excited for this possibly, expanding outside of Apple TV, maybe to iPads and the like, devices that are known as personal devices, but in a lot of households are shared amongst people. So I would love to see that. But from an Apple TV perspective, what's next, do you think, for profiles? We've had so many requests over the years, Devon. So it feels like the perfect time to maybe mention a couple.
Yeah, and it feels like the time that some of them might be fulfilled, because profiles seem to be a pretty big focus in the tvOS 26 cycle. We saw them brought to the forefront of the power on flow with tvOS 26.0, and now we're seeing them changed even more in 26.2. So I'm feeling good about profiles right now and our hope for things to continue to change there. What I've been thinking about is, of course, now you're going to have even more people on your Apple TV switching between profiles. You're going to have children logging in as well, even more so than before. And so to me, I think it's a good time for home screen and appearance customization per profile, because as we talked about before, different people like different services. They may want different things in that top row. My son loves YouTube. He watches quite a bit of YouTube on the Apple TV, of course, within the limits of what's appropriate. But personally, I don't watch a ton of YouTube on my Apple TV, so I wouldn't put that in the top row normally. But because we can't customize per profile, it is up there for all profiles on our Apple TV. And it took one of the slots of the services that I would normally have up there. It's not a huge deal, but I think it'd be cool to be able to change those icons, rearrange them per profile, and even maybe eventually do some personalization on that home screen as well. I mean, how cool would it be to have like a Snoopy themed home screen for kids, and maybe different backgrounds or color schemes for different profiles, so you could tell when you're switching between them exactly who's logged in. Besides of course, the profile picture up in the top corner, any more customization would be another indication of what profile you're in and let you know if you're not logged into the right one. So that's what I was thinking. Just more customization per profile would be really nice. Yeah, again, it wouldn't be something I'd be super surprised to see throughout tvOS 26 with what they're doing with profiles right now. How about you?
I think the biggest pain of profiles, which still exists now, is the logins to different apps tying in with the profiles on Apple TV. No matter how Apple go about this is their third attempt this year to convince partners to go along and sync everything through iCloud and make everything just work as we would hope. Because these third-party apps all have their own profile systems, they really don't care if an Apple TV user has to make a few more clicks. And the reality is competing platforms like Android TV and Amazon have their own ways in which when you log into the profile, all settings that have been set for that particular profile are linked in, right? So your saved login, for example, for Netflix or Amazon Prime would be logged into that profile because it's built within the settings of that profile and not merged across all of the others. I'd say that's the biggest thing for me. The personalization, though, 100%. I want the top row to be my top row. At the same time, if my mum logs into her Apple TV, I want her to be able to have QVC at the top and not think that she's getting in the way. So, very, very cool. And as I say, very, very surprising. Judy Clover of Mac Rumors actually noticed this first before everyone else, and everyone else jumped on. So thank you to Julie for finding this initially. Had a lot of fun checking this all out and seeing what works and what doesn't, and no doubt when this does release publicly we will be recapping it again. But yeah, very, very cool. TV profiles getting a boost in tvOS 26.2.
You love to see it, Sigmund. Another thing you love to see is new peripherals coming to Apple Vision Pro. We've been excited about this since WWDC when it was announced, and it has finally happened. Sony's PlayStation VR2 Sense controllers are now officially available for purchase from Apple as an import accessory for Apple Vision Pro, at least as of the time of recording in the US. We haven't seen the international rollout just yet. They're packaged with an official charging dock and priced at $250. These controllers are meant mostly for gaming, although you can use them to navigate the system as well. They offer that 6 degrees of freedom and just improved input for games beyond what we've seen with hand tracking. We've seen a handful of games come out that either support or require the PSVR2 Sense controllers now. We've got Pickle Pro, pickleball app that I'm really excited to give a try to. Ping Pong Club, which is a game that I've loved with hand tracking, and so I'm looking forward to trying that with the controllers as well. And there was a first-person shooter game that came out recently called Spatial Rifts, and it supports both hand tracking and the controllers. I tried it with hand tracking, and it worked okay, but I do feel like for a game like that, you're definitely going to want the controllers. And so this just opens up, I think, a lot more developers in the VR gaming space to consider Apple Vision Pro and Vision OS. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the fruits of this are. Of course, this complements the release of the Logitech Muse last month, which is a stylus for Apple Vision Pro. It's seeing some expansions within Vision OS 26.2 beta to be able to navigate the system as well and interact with more apps beyond just the ones that have specifically added support for it. And so that's exciting. It's an exciting time for fans of Apple Vision Pro who are looking at expanding it with accessories. It's just a world that continues to grow, Sigmund.
Yeah, and some big news as well when it comes to immersive video, which we will talk about a little bit later in releases. I'm really looking forward to checking out Pickleball Pro with the controllers, because I feel like that's where I'm going to be able to get my short boosts of exercise. Just the idea sounds quite frenetic to me. Mark Gurman got talking to us about fitness this past week in his Paramount newsletter, talking about the future of Apple Fitness Plus and it being under review as the service is moved under Vice President of Health Sumbul Desai, who reports directly to the service's chief Eddie Q. The service, as we know, and we've been there since day dot, it's got a small, loyal fan base. Apparently it suffers from low revenue and high churn, but the reality is it's not an expensive outlay, I wouldn't have thought. Given the simplicity of the service and what it offers. I don't think there's any fear of it going anywhere, but maybe be refreshed in some ways, maybe live classes for different regions.
Live classes would make a lot of sense to me. I would think that SharePlay offers some of that in terms of doing exercises with your friends, but there is an element to actually feeling like you're watching the trainer live and interacting with them, even doing things like shout outs that Apple Fitness Plus doesn't incorporate. I think Apple has done a magnificent job with the Fitness Plus service. The videos just look incredible. It seems comprehensive in the sense that it can meet people where they are in their fitness journeys and really cater to a wide range of people in terms of starting out versus those who are really intensively training and even training for like professional sports and things like that. I don't know exactly why the service hasn't grown beyond the level that it has, other than maybe it's just a really tough category to compete in with the big companies that are doing this sort of thing. Personally, I love Fitness Plus and I want it to stick around and I want it to continue to, whatever happens with it, to continue to have the heart that it does for being accessible to people and putting very much the trainers at the forefront, letting them be the voice of the service in a way that makes you feel connected to them. My hopes are that this review would hopefully lead to Apple investing more in the service and not less, and getting the word out about it in a way that could get more people involved. And again, I don't know if it's a pricing thing. I don't know a lot about the general world of online fitness classes and if there's something that needs to be done there. But regardless, I think Fitness Plus is a good thing for Apple to have in its portfolio. Apple very much cares about health and wellness and playing in that space, and Fitness Plus has been a part of that and continues to be. It's a great addition to the Apple One bundle, pushing people up towards that premier level, which of course Apple makes more money off of. And I really hope that the future Fitness Plus is one that Apple continues to see the value in and continue to put the energy into that it needs. And I hope that's the result of this review, but we'll have to wait and see if anything public comes out about it.
Yeah, I think as Apple One subscribers, Apple One Premier subscribers, we both enjoy it when we have time. I'm not sure how much you use it weekly or if you use it daily. I'm definitely more of a weekly user. I like my outdoor walks and my Apple Watch pretty much covers me. But yeah, very, very cool. One thing I don't think is going to happen, though, is I don't think we're going to see a price surge on Apple Fitness Plus. We leave that to the streamers because, of course, Paramount Plus, the latest to announce plans to increase the prices of its streaming tiers, but is actually going to wait a little while. Going to leave us until January when the service becomes the new home of UFC. Paramount Plus Essential rises to $8.99 per month, up from $7.99, and Paramount Plus Premium rises to $13.99 per month, up from $12.99. I guess if you're a UFC fan, you're super stoked about this extra dollar increase for what you're getting. And Paramount Plus aren't the only ones to really try and put everything all under one roof. And no, not Toys R Us, at Disney Plus. And they've done so with aplomb, really, with their redesign slowly rolling out to users over the past week or so. I haven't had hands-on yet, purely because the redesign hasn't rolled out to me the last time I checked. But Devon, as we know, you're a big Disney Plus fan, constantly in the app. What have you seen? What makes sense? What doesn't? And overall, are you happy with the changes that have been made? I think we're seeing like a reshape of the app almost every 9 months, probably for the last few years now.
Yeah, the Disney Plus app has changed a ton since it was first released. It's really become the main focus of Disney's streaming development in a way that I love because I'm a bundle subscriber and I actually like having everything in the one app. And so as they're moving towards the Hulu app becoming phased out and all the Hulu content being available in the Disney Plus app, this is their attempt to try to reorganize things a bit and make it make more sense for those who, whether you subscribe to 1, 2, or 3 of their services, you should be able to find what you're looking for a lot easier. So opening the main Disney Plus screen, it doesn't look that much different. You've still got the content of recommendations and things that you're watching from all the services. It's all mixed in together on the home screen. What's different now, though, is there's a top tab bar. So if you scroll all the way to the top, there's now these like meta tabs that go above the screen, and they're for each service that's contained within Disney Plus. So you've got Disney Plus, of course, Hulu, ESPN, and then the main tab is the For You tab, which has your recommendations from all the services. And so I only subscribe to Disney Plus and Hulu. I don't have an ESPN subscription, not to the full-on, ESPN service now or what used to be called ESPN Plus. I don't have either of those, but the tab is still there, and I can go into it and see what's available and get the offer to upgrade to get access to that if I want to. But what they have done with this update is cleaned up the For You tab so that within For You, it's all content that I do have access to. And so I'm not going to, anything that's recommended to me, I'm not going to click on it and be told, oh, you have to pay to watch this. It's all just there. And then within the Disney Plus and Hulu tabs, what I love is that when I went to the Disney Plus tab, it instantly transported me back to day one of Disney Plus. You remember with like the brands at the top, Disney, Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel, and National Geographic. That is what the Disney Plus tab is. So it's basically transporting you back to those days. You have the ability to simplify the experience in that way if you want to. So if you only subscribe to one service, or if you want to hone in on a particular service for a particular time, you can get that very streamlined experience that we had before with Disney Plus, before everything was bundled together. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. If you want to watch all the services together, I love having Disney Plus and Hulu mixed in. I don't really care which service a particular title comes from. I just want to be able to access it. That's there in the For You tab, or you can split it out. The other thing they've added is in the left sidebar, you've got a new Live tab. So even though there's the top tab bar for the services, you still got the left sidebar for navigating the app, and there's lots of different categories there that you can go through. The Live tab is interesting to me. You can see live news, you can see live sports, including things that you don't have access to, and you'd be asked to upgrade to get access to them. And you have some recommended Disney Plus streams, which is their live service where if you don't know exactly what you want to watch, you just pick a category, like preschool, Marvel, throwback, something like that, and it'll just play something live for you on a running basis, which is a cool addition. But for some reason in the Live tab, it doesn't have all the streams. It just has a couple of them. You still have to go to the main tab in For You and scroll down to the streams horizontal bar to see all of them. So I'm not sure exactly what that is about. If my algorithm just thinks I care more about live sports than the streams I already have access to, I'm not totally sure there. But I was a little confused. I was like, did they axe some of these? And no, they're all still there. You just have to go to the For You tab, and it's not all in the Live tab right now. So not totally sure what's happening there. Hopefully they'll get that fixed, because I want to have anything live in the app in that Live tab, and it's not quite there right now. I really do like this new layout and the ability to filter by the service that you're subscribed to. And I think this is setting us up well for that future when the Hulu app is no longer around. Everyone who's subscribed to Hulu is going to be within the Disney Plus app. And then, of course, ESPN subscribers have that option as well. So I'm impressed with it. I like it a lot. A couple tweaks to work out with the live tab. But other than that, I think this is a really good change.
I'd imagine the sports algorithm is probably linked to that deal that has subsided between YouTube TV and Disney, and Disney trying to take a little bit advantage of that. Interestingly, though, where there probably isn't room for a tab in the Disney Plus app right now is for Warner Brothers. Of course, we talked a little while ago about Warner Brothers being up for sale, and we talked about the opportunity maybe that could come about for Apple. Well, Apple's Eddie Q, Zach Van Amberg, and Jamie Eilich gave a wide-ranging interview in the latest edition of Screen International, which is an industry paper, really, which we'll link to in the show notes. But Q even hinted at the release of For All Mankind Season 5 and Ted Lasso Season 4 next year. But the things that I thought really stood out here was the kind of reluctance to really hedge his bet on purchases of anything even as big as Warner Brothers, and also a reluctance to introduce an ad-based tier, which I'm really, really relieved by. It does seem that Eddie Q is calming those fears, even though my other fear is that either Sundance or Netflix get Warner Brothers and we're all doomed. In terms of the advertising and what's to come, good news from your perspective?
I think so. Yeah, I like that Apple TV is ad-free, simplified, and I like that Eddie Q is getting out and doing more interviews, talking more about some of the thought process behind Apple TV. I think it generates, of course, good buzz for the service as they're going through this transition, but it's also just good to hear more behind the scenes of how the company approaches it, their mindset behind it, their goals with it. And, Eddie Q just does a really good job of putting those things into words, and I think assuaging a lot of the fears or misconceptions about Apple TV. And so I'm really happy that he's been out, of course, with Zach and Jamie as well, doing these interviews. And I highly recommend reading the whole thing because they go into a lot of detail in a lot of different avenues with Apple TV. And it's always good to hear more about the thought process behind it. Last week, we had a really long in-development news section segment. Seemed like Apple had just ordered every series and film under the sun last week, and lots of exciting collaborations with people we've seen on Apple TV before and getting to see more from them. This week, we've got one in-development story, a little bit quieter this week, but this is one that's exciting as well. Apple's acquired the rights to adapt the manuscript for J.S. Mank and David Carlisle's upcoming book, Fallen Astronaut, in a deal that Deadline says cost in the high six figures. Described as Gravity crossed with A Few Good Men, Fallen Astronaut has a tech-forward concept and includes a crucial sequence with VR, which seems like a very good fit with where Apple is right now. The film will be produced by Scott Glassgold and his 1201 Films, with Mike and Carlisle serving as executive producers. From what I've read about this project segment, it seemed like Apple really wanted to get in on it early because the book itself doesn't even have a publisher yet. There's just a manuscript, and the film rights have already been sold. So this seems like a really exciting project. We'll wait and see what exactly happens with the book, and if we see the book before the film. But regardless, just based on what we've heard, the people involved, I think this is going to be a cool project and one that we'll be very interested to keep our eyes on.
I mean, this week, minus the in-development news, I think was a moment for everyone to kind of put their feet back and really appreciate the fruits of their labours. And not just at Apple, but from the Critics' Choice, Documentary Awards, and the Grammy Awards. First off, wins. for the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards for Mr. Scorsese, winning both biographical documentary and limited documentary series. And then we've got some Grammy Award nominations. F1 the movie with 3 nominations: Best Dance Pop Recording, Just Keep Watching by Tate McRae; Best Country Solo Performance, Bad As I Used to Be by Chris Stapleton; and Best Compilation Soundtrack for Visual Media for F1 the movie. And the Grammys weren't shy about Severance either, with 1 nomination, Best Score Soundtrack for Visual Media for the brilliant Theodore Shapiro. Winners honoured on February 1st, which I believe falls once again on the same day as the BAFTA Awards. So it'll be interesting to see who shows up where, no doubt, when the nominations come out for the BAFTA Awards as well. Let's talk about Apple TV releases for this week, starting with a surprise release on Tuesday. Flight Ready in Apple Immersive Video sees us report to the flight deck and strap in with F-18 fighter pilots for a full throttle ride through the skies. This is 14 minutes. I have not yet been able to get my Apple Vision Pro on to check this out, but as a fan of Top Gun and reading the synopsis, I'm very, very excited for this, and I'm very, very excited for what this concept could possibly herald into the future. Have you had a chance to check this out yet?
Oh yes, and it is a thrill ride, as you would expect. You know, we've seen with Apple Immersive Video extreme sports portrayed on screen, but for the up-in-the-air stuff, it's been more casual. It's been elevated, you know, just very casual, slow-moving things through the sky. This is not that at all. This is high adrenaline. You're getting up in the air with these planes. There's a particular shot that absolutely got my stomach in a way that it's just thrilling, you know, like a roller coaster kind of thing. So much fun. You know, my experience with aircraft carriers probably extends about as far as playing Battleship. As a kid, you know, I knew the concept of them, but I didn't realize how small they are for the number of planes that they carry and the runway length that these pilots have to deal with to stop. It's really incredible. And so, yeah, if you have an Apple Vision Pro, definitely check this one out. It's a lot of fun. It gives you an appreciation for what these pilots are able to do. And it's just another one of those experiences that most of us would never get to have if not for this kind of technology, which I think is very cool. Wednesday, of course, saw the premiere of Palm Royale Season 2 and the penultimate episode of this season of The Morning Show, alongside new episodes of Loot and Down Cemetery Road. Today sees the release of a new game for Apple Arcade, this one specifically for Apple Vision Pro, Glassbreakers, Champions of Moss. Fans of the series will be excited to experience that world in an immersive environment, and it's going to be a great addition to Apple Arcade coming out today. Friday sees the premiere of our other highlight this week, Come See Me in the Good Light, as well as new episodes of Pluribus and The Last Frontier, and the penultimate episode of Knife Edge. There is something special happening this weekend on Apple TV, Sigmund. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Saturday and Sunday, streaming free for all, a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. So very, very much looking forward to checking that out. Although, of course, we get to watch it whenever. I think it's a bit like Christmas movies for some people, where we'll want to dive into it in the middle of summer. But yes, a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving available to all, alongside the MOS playoffs available to all Apple TV subscribers this weekend. And we leave you with a couple of extras. Pluribus, another take with Vince Gilligan and Rhea Seehorn, and a Apple Fitness Plus Artist Spotlight, Taylor Swift with 3 new workouts featuring songs from the life of a showgirl. So that's everything coming this week on Apple TV. But of course, we have our Up Next picks. And of course, Devon, you've got something for us. I'm really actually excited about this because I enjoyed the original. A new sequel that came out of nowhere, really. Yeah, Freakier Friday.
Yeah, people have been asking for this for 2 decades now. And for whatever reason, things have aligned and come together for Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis to reunite for this long-awaited sequel, alongside Julia Butters, Sophia Hammonds, Manny Jacinto, and, of course, Chad Michael Murray. The sequel is directed by Nisha Ganatra of Shameless, Mr. Robot, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Written by Jordan Weiss, the creator of Dollface, a series that I adored on Hulu. Years after Tess and Anna endured an identity crisis, Anna now has a daughter of her own and a soon-to-be stepdaughter. As they navigate the myriad challenges that come when two families merge, Tess and Anna discover lightning might indeed strike twice. So as you can imagine, if you know the premise of the original film, the mother-daughter body swap, now we've got mother, daughter, daughter, stepdaughter, and it gets complicated, but it's so much fun, and it looks like a great ride. Freaky Friday is one of those films that came out at the perfect time, not only for me, but for my family, in terms of being one of those films that me and my siblings just can't ever get out of our heads. And to this day, if one of us needs to give somebody something else, if we want one of our siblings to give us something, we'll say, "Grandpa, pass the milk." And it's just one of those lines that has stuck with us forever. And a film that I loved as a kid. So happy to see Lindsay Lohan, stepping back into the spotlight in a lot of ways. She's been doing more work the past couple of years, which is really great to see. And I'm really excited to see this. Of course, I'm a huge fan of Manny Jacinto as well. Happy to see him come into the series. And who knows, we might be seeing Freakiest Friday in another 20 years segment. I'd be down for it. If they just want to reunite every couple decades and make a new one, I would love that. But for fans of Freaky Friday who want to see the sequel, it is now streaming on Disney+.
There we go. I have an up next pick, and that is quite simply One Battle After Another. It's available on the Apple TV store on Friday of this week. It's Paul Thomas Anderson's latest film, and it stars Leonardo DiCaprio. Presumed Innocents Chase Infinity in her debut feature. Incredible performance. Regina Hall, Sean Penn, amazing. Alana Haim from Haim, Teyana Taylor, Wood Harris, and Benicio del Toro. It follows a washed-up revolutionary called Bob, whom exists in a state of stone paranoia, surviving off-grid with his spirited, self-reliant daughter, Willa. But then his evil nemesis resurfaces after 16 years, and she goes missing, throwing the former radical into a scramble to find her, as both father and daughter battle the consequences of his past. And a lot has actually been said about this film upon its theatrical debut. Some claiming it as their favourite film of the year, some calling it one of their favourite films of all time. Technically, both visually and audibly, it's hard to deny. And then performances throughout are out of this world, but the undercurrent of the storyline, I think, is going to hit maybe a little too close to home for some. This is, however, more than a father-daughter drama. Instead, it tackles extremism on both sides and political extremism, and that may not be apparent to some on first watch, and hence some confusion on my first viewing, thinking at first that it was glorifying acts of terrorism and glorifying one side of a political divide, when in fact it was doing the exact opposite, and that became clearer as each minute passed. In my screening, when I saw this in cinemas, I wasn't the biggest fan on the first screening, despite the technical excellence. But what I was a fan of was the most intense chase scene that I think I've seen committed to film in decades, and the camera trickery is just absolutely another level, Devon. I'll say I think this is going to be seen as a classic as time passes. It did fail at the box office. I'd also say for newcomers to Paul Thomas Anderson's work, this is no Licorice Pizza, so PTA newbies, be warned. But yeah, a hard-hitting, but I think a worthwhile watch. One Battle After Another. Maybe watch that before you watch Freakier Friday, if you're going to do it as a double bill, which would be the strangest double bill ever, but hey, we've given you that opportunity, Devon.
Well, I actually think those might make a good pair in terms of just, the heaviness and then lightening the mood a little bit with Freakier Friday. But regardless, those are our two recommendations for your watching this weekend, in addition to all the great things coming out on Apple TV. That's it for us this week. Of course, we want to thank everyone so much for listening. We really appreciate you spending the time with us this week. If you have anything you'd like to share with us about the topics we're discussing, things that you're watching that you want us to know about, you can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes. And you can reach out via our contact form, which we'll also link in the show notes.
We'll be back next week, so until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week.